Rabbit is the latest apparel brand to join the running shoe ranks. But did the high quality and attention to detail of their running gear translate to the running shoe? Meet the Rabbit Dreamchaser. What's up, everybody? I'm Eric McIntyre, aka Rad Dad Bod, and you're watching Rad Dad Bod TV, where we review running shoes. Today we're reviewing the Rabbit Dreamchaser, which is Rabbit's first ever running shoe. Now, if it's your first time watching one of these reviews, you may notice some timestamps in the description below. Feel free to click around to the different parts of the review that you would like to hear most, but if you do so, I sure would appreciate if you came back and watched the full video at some point, because I put a lot of work into these videos to make sure they're as comprehensive and educational as possible for you. Now, before we dive into the specifics of the shoe, just a few disclaimers. I was provided this shoe for the purpose of review directly from Rabbit's PR team. That being said, I was not paid for my opinion, nor was I given any specific obligation of videos to make. With all that in mind, neither Rabbit nor anyone involved gets to watch this video beforehand, and these thoughts are entirely my own. One more disclaimer that is actually unique to this shoe is I received a prototype version of the shoe, so the outsole there is going to be a little bit different than the actual general release model. As you can see, there are exposed carbon tracks or carbon fiber strips there on the outsole, and in the final production model, due to feedback from reviewers like myself, Rabbit did decide to actually cover those up with some additional rubber. So please take everything that I say with a grain of salt when talking about the shoe, and I will not be talking about any qualms that I kind of had with the shoe in terms of those carbon tracks. With that out of the way, let's talk about intended use. So the Rabbit Dreamchaser is made for daily miles, specifically easy miles. With that in mind, that is how I will be evaluating the shoe and talking about it throughout this review. From a price point, it comes in at $160, which in my opinion is a little bit steep for a shoe that is only really built for some kind of easy runs, but we'll talk a little bit more about that throughout the review. And it's not uncommon, I guess, at this point in time for a daily use shoe to kind of cost that range. I do believe that you are paying a little bit for the, not the logo, but the brand representation of Rabbit. And I'm actually wearing some Rabbit running shorts right now. I actually love the brand, 100% love the clothing. And so if you're wanting to be all decked out in Rabbit, then again, you're probably paying a little bit of a premium for a kind of premium running gear brand. From a spec standpoint, this comes in at 11.4 ounces in a men's size 9, which is definitely on the heavier side. Heel stack comes in at a whopping 42 millimeters, and the forefoot stack is a 37 millimeter, meaning it has a 5 millimeter heel to toe drop. From a fit standpoint, I felt that this shoe fit a little bit long and fairly roomy overall. It's a shoe that you may want to consider half sizing down in. I had my normal 10.5 and I didn't have a ton of trouble with it, but it was enough that I did notice it. I found that this shoe for the most part was accommodating, so I don't know if I would call it a full wide fitting shoe, but for sure I did have to cinch down laces in order to get some good lockdown overall. From an upper standpoint, it's a 100% polyester knit that has been described as supposedly being very, very breathable, but for me, I do have to say that that was the opposite of my personal experience. I felt like the shoe was really, really warm, and I would be a little bit worried about wearing it on hot summer days and may reserve it for indoor miles, for walking, as well as for kind of those colder days overall. The polyester knit I think was a good overall idea, but for whatever reason, it just didn't quite translate. Additional aspects of the upper that I felt needed a little bit more improvement was also the lacing system. It's just kind of your standard lacing system. There's not really any additional technology in the shoe in terms of lacing, and so I just found like it was really hard to get that good midfoot lockdown. And with the shoe fitting a little bit long and overall kind of roomy, I would have liked to get a little bit more cinching down in that midfoot area overall. Now, the upper itself is very, very comfortable. There is a fully gusseted tongue, which to me is always welcome and should be kind of the bare minimum standard for all running shoes, but for some reason it's not. And there's some really nice cushion there in the heel and around the foot. So I've heard the shoe kind of described as a sweater for your feet at times, and I think that that is kind of accurate in terms of the upper, just in the sense that it is very, very comfortable. It is very, very soft, but it's going to be fairly warm overall. From a midsole standpoint, you have a eTPU foam, and it is probably the squishiest foam, or one of the squishiest foams that I've ever tried underfoot. Very, very similar to the sensation of like the New Balance 1080, where there's just really tons of squish. And I did find that that squish got more squishy as the temperatures heated up, which is another reason why I may avoid this shoe on a hot summer day. Now, although it's part of the outsole, it's covered up in the updated version, so I'm going to speak about it in terms of the midsole, but there are these carbon tracks, which I believe the intention of these carbon tracks, or these carbon fiber strips here on the shoe, were to add additional structure and stability to a very, very squishy overall foam. And in that sense, I do think they did the job. I think without those carbon fiber strips, this shoe would probably be very unstable and very, very squishy. And those just kind of give a little bit more of a foundation for your foot. Now, from a pace versatility standpoint, you're not really getting any. This is a very one-note shoe, which is not a good or bad thing. It just is. It is really made for easy runs and maybe kind of daily miles. Understanding again that that was the intention of the shoe, then it does check that box, but I do like my shoes to be able to do a little bit more usually. From an outsole standpoint, they do a really good job with this nice slip resistant rubber. It really does check the box of kind of durability and giving you traction on roads. And with the addition of more of that slip resistant rubber on those carbon tracks, I do believe that that's just going to add to the shoe overall, although it is probably adding a little bit of weight, which I would like to see them shed some. Admittedly, I haven't put a ton of miles on these shoes because it has gotten very, very hot here in Utah, but on those daily runs where I did use them, they were very, very comfortable and really allowed my foot to kind of have that comfort, have that protection, and have that squish underneath. Now, as far as who's this shoe for, I do believe that this is just going to be kind of for your Rabbit stands or fans. Big fans of the shoe, people who really like the overall branding, want to support a amazing business, are gonna want to grab this shoe. They have some fun overall colors as well. They had a Boston Marathon edition that was a limited release around the Boston Marathon, and so really I think that that's going to be the primary users. I also think those who are traveling a lot, who need a shoe that they can wear on foot throughout the day, those who work on their feet, maybe nurses, service workers, restaurant workers, things along those lines, or people along those lines, are really going to enjoy this shoe for those purposes. From a running perspective, I just feel like there are a lot of shoes out there that do more, and so it's really hard to justify $160 for a, again, primarily easy day shoe. Though I'm not saying people don't, because those shoes definitely exist and people are buying them, but most are going to have kind of at least an extra notch or an extra level of responsiveness that this shoe just kind of lacks a little bit. As far as comparisons go for this shoe, again, thinking maybe something like the Hoka Clifton is going to be a similar overall use case, but I do feel like the Clifton is a little bit firmer, though not firm, and is going to give you a little bit more pop. The Hoka Skyflow, the new Hoka Daily Trainer, is going to be maybe a slightly closer comparison, both in stack height as well as kind of squish of the foam, but even then I do believe that the eTPU foam in the Dreamchaser is squishier overall and overall less bouncy or responsive. So the Skyflow you could take up tempo a little bit, though it still is going to be primarily easy miles. The Dreamchaser, I think, again, you're just going to want to stick on those recovery easy days with. Final thoughts, I was really excited to receive this shoe, and I'm grateful to be kind of involved in the early review process for this shoe. But if I'm being 100% honest, I was expecting a little bit more from Rabbit. Their running apparel is probably my top 1 or 2 in terms of like running apparel options. I absolutely love their singlets. Their running shorts are awesome for road and trail. And so I really like, with a brand that has that level of quality and attention to detail, I was just hoping for a little bit more of a performance-oriented running shoe as opposed to more of like an easy day and can double kind of as a casual use shoe. But that may not have been the direction that they wanted to go. I'll be curious to see if they end up coming out with another model that is maybe slightly more lightweight, a little bit more responsive, or what their overall reaction will be to the market as a whole. What I love is that Rabbit has already shown a willingness to innovate and change and adapt to feedback from their target audience, which again became evident when they ended up adding additional rubber to the outsole to cover up the carbon tracks. So if I could give my 2 cents on the Dreamchaser 2 and what that might look like, I would say go with a slightly more responsive foam. Try and see if you can shed the weight a little bit as well, whether that's through kind of cutting out a little bit more of the foam, maybe there in the outsole, or going with a slightly lighter weight upper. But there's a ton of benefit to this shoe, understanding that it's 100% recycled material in that upper, which I think is a big accomplishment in itself. So there we go. That's the Rabbit Dreamchaser. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. And if you're still here, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and leave me a like. And let me know what your thoughts are on running apparel companies designing running shoes. Thanks, everybody.